Welcome back to Keepin' It Comic. I'm GoofyRhexxi. So I wanted to talk to you about one of the biggest misses right now in the MCU, which is that they do not have a big three. I think a lot of people misunderstand just how Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor impacted the MCU. On one side, you had a genius billionaire, right? The other side, the leader and the super soldier. And then you had the demigod. And their choices literally shaped the entire Infinity Saga, and with specific actions made those 11 years as dynamic as the MCU was. So I think it's important to unpack the specific importance that they had in the MCU, and then discuss why the MCU needs another big three and who I believe that the next big three should be in the MCU. Now, the very concept of a big three is something that fans have always been familiar with in the comic book world. In the DC comics, the big three has always been Superman, you have Batman, Wonder Woman. Those were the heavy hitters. And for all the anime watchers and manga readers, we know that One Piece, Bleach, and Naruto are the big three of the shonen genre. Yes, I know a lot will replace Bleach with Dragon Ball Z, but specifically right for the Marvel Comics as well as the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the big three is the classic Iron Man, Captain America, and then Thor. And if I'm being specific, in the comics, this particular big three, Thor, Cap, and Tony, those are the big three of the Avengers, and not necessarily the entire Marvel Comics. And believe it or not, the term big three goes back decades, well into the early years of Marvel Comics. There was even an Avengers trade paperback titled The Big Three that literally had the faces of these heroes. Now, this trio were regarded as the pillars of the Avengers. They're the guys that everybody sort of looks up to for guidance and the ones who would reprimand others whenever they messed up. Now, fun fact, the term big three was first used in Avengers issue 126 back in 1963 when the trio were having a meeting. Thor and Iron Man, they were trying to convince Captain America not to quit being a superhero, and whenever there was this civil unrest and the heroes needed their attention, Swordsman told the other heroes that the big three were still in a conference. From my recollection, that was the first time that those words were ever plainly used to refer to our trio, indicating just how important that they were in the comics. And this fact is even more true, definitely, for the movies in the MCU. And man, back in 2008, we got introduced to Tony Stark, a renegade billionaire who built a suit of armor in a cave and decided to become an international vigilante. This was all to deal with the sins of his past, as well as the legacy of his family. He became Iron Man and ended up being a prominent voice in the movie / the MCU, just like in the comics. The funny thing is, it was a very deliberate choice on the path of Marvel Studios to have Tony be the one who started the MCU. According to Charlie Wen, the former Marvel Studios head of visual development. Now, Tony represented a level of relatability, right, amongst the superheroes. He was tech savvy, which a lot of people could relate to. After all, tech was one of the fundamental things that we use every single day, so it wasn't exactly a strange concept to most audiences. Tony also had an enormous amount of flaws and needed to grow in so many ways that as an audience, we definitely could resonate with. So that's the reason why they decided to go with him, even though at the specific time he wasn't the most popular, considering that he was behind characters like the X-Men, Spider-Man, the Hulk, and even more.
What was good with Iron Man is that it laid a foundation for what is tech on Earth. How do we ground it to Earth and to things that we understand? Tech is something easier for us to sort of, we use it every day, right?
And then there was Captain America, a super soldier who fought in World War II and was pivotal in saving the world against Nazis. Now he's present in the 21st century, and thanks to his old-timey wisdom, the Boy Scout antics, he got leadership skills, capacity for good, and his ability to whoop some people's ass. He became a prominent voice in the Avengers. And don't forget about Thor. Now, he's a little bit of an outlier in this group, if you ask me, right? Because he's an actual god. That's kind of hard to relate to, but thanks to the genius of the MCU, they made him a regular guy in the first Thor movie so the audience could understand him, taking him through a journey of humility, self-discovery, and loss. I mean, the amount of losses that happen on the path of Thor in the MCU is just crazy. It's insane. And that's what made you connect with the character, because of course he saw in Infinity War when he's crying and he was reflecting back on this loss, that allowed you to be able to connect with this hero. And in Endgame, you felt for him because it had finally kind of just come to a head and he was just kind of buried under all of it, right? Emotionally, we can definitely relate to that as an audience. Fair to say that this transforms him from a proud, egotistical, divine being to a hero who values lives and then tries to do the right thing despite the challenges that he faces. And at the base, this big three, the billionaire who's trying to make up for his sins of the past, and an out-of-time soldier who sticks to his ideals and does what he believes is right, and a god still doing his best to fight on despite everything that he's lost, these were the pillars of the MCU. And in every MCU project they were involved in, we look forward to what they were going to do, the choices that they were going to make, and the actions decisions that they'd take, and of course the butts that they were going to kick along the way. It became so important that the choices of these characters shaped and decided the direction of the MCU. Tony created an AI android because he wanted to protect the world. It had dire consequences for the next couple of movies. Captain America decides not to sign the Sokovia Accords, boom, Civil War, and the Avengers broke up, and look at how much that affected the MCU. That was a direct reason why they lost to Thanos. That whole event introduced a bunch of characters into the fold and have shaped the story in so many interesting ways. Even such a thing as Thor aiming for the chest instead of the neck of Thanos led to half the universe getting destroyed. And let's also not forget that he was the one that found out, right, that Thanos was trying to gather up all of these Infinity Stones, although he didn't know that it was Thanos at the time. But another reason why the big three worked so well was because the casting for these roles, it was almost perfect, right? Like Robert Downey Jr. was perfect for Iron Man, and so was Chris. And then of course, I know the other delicious Chris, right? Everybody loves these actors, right, in these roles, so it's translated into their love for the characters and the movies that they starred in. That's how important the big three was. But that's no longer the case, right? We no longer have a big three in the MCU. There are no more pillars that hold up the structure for all of our heroes. The heroes, as well as the audience, have no one to look up to, someone to inspire and excite us with their choices and ideals. There's just a fundamental lack of icons, and honestly, I'm not sure if it's necessarily Marvel Studios' fault per se. But before I get into that, guys, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Keepin the Comic here has a lot of great content lined up for this channel, but we definitely need your support in order for us to be able to get more love in the YouTube algorithm so our videos can be shown to a wider audience here. So if you can please hit that like button, also that subscribe button, that would definitely be appreciated by us. Now, as I've already established, the concept of a big three or a group of superheroes that act as pillars in a fandom or comic universe is nothing new to Marvel. So when Endgame came around and most of the current big three were getting retired or killed or becoming dads, Marvel Studios made plans to create a new big three, a new set of A-listers that were going to be the new face of the franchise and carry the story for the next couple of years. It was Chadwick Boseman as Black Panther, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, and then Brie Larson as Captain Marvel. These were supposed to be the new pillars, the big three 2.0, if you want to call it that, right? But sadly, of course, we all know that it didn't go that way. First of all, we lost Chadwick Boseman under unfortunate circumstances. This was a loss that was tragic in every sense of the word, like definitely in real life and of course for the MCU. Boseman's death seriously hurt a large chunk of the main story of the MCU. Black Panther 2 was supposed to set up major stakes in the universe by having T'Challa go head to head with Namor. It would have been a glorious sight to behold, and not a day goes by where I just think about how good that movie would have been if Chadwick was still with us. And don't get me wrong, I think Letitia did as best as a job that she could, but you could definitely tell that the movie just missed having Chadwick's presence. Another reason for the dissolution in the next big three was the Brie Larson hate. I don't think Marvel could have anticipated how much the fans would dislike Brie Larson, and this is not a joke. I mean, I don't fully understand why people hate her so much, and it's particularly unfair because her performance in the Marvels was actually not that bad, and she had some pretty decent moments where she displayed some emotion and also some heart, which was one of our biggest gripes in the first Captain Marvel movie. Now, to be fair, it's nothing compared to what the big three did in the other movies. As far as Carol Danvers goes, I still feel like she did a pretty good job, but I gotta say this though, I still feel like there's a lack of depth in the character, and perhaps that depth could have been established in the Marvels, but given the very limited runtime of the movie, and of course focusing on two other strong heroes, that depth wasn't really showcased, so not a lot of people care about what happens to her character-wise. So therefore, we're lacking another pillar. The only person who's still kind of able to fulfill this role as a pillar in the MCU right now, in my opinion, is Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man is arguably Marvel's biggest superhero right now. He is someone everybody is heavily involved with and cares so much about with every fiber of their being. Spider-Man is the only one from the suggested lineup capable of being a part of the new big three and is played by a beloved actor, and his character has matured in the MCU now, so I think he's finally ready to step into a leadership role. So the question is, who fills out the other two spots as a part of this big three? Now, in my opinion, this is not necessarily an easy lineup to make because the characters are kind of few and far between, if you ask me. But like I said, we've already established that Spider-Man is more than capable of fulfilling that role, so he gets a spot by default. Next, we need someone that's eccentric and powerful, someone whose choices can have serious effect on things, and someone who has a strained relationship with Spider-Man that can help them have those good back and forths that Tony and Cap used to have, building tension and a good sense of leadership. So for the number 2 spot, I can honestly say Doctor Strange. Now, if you watch some of our other videos, you know that we've thrown Doctor Strange into the pit a couple weeks ago. You should definitely check out that video because it's pretty funny. But if you did watch that video, you'll understand that Doctor Strange is someone whose choices have dire consequences for everyone around him and even the multiverse, similar to the way that Tony was. So he's a good fit for the big three, and he's also played by a beloved actor. Now, for the 3rd spot, we need a complete wild card, right? Maybe not like Thor, but someone who was equally or even more loved than Thor. I'm talking about the merc with a mouth himself, my man, Deadpool.
Captain,
Now, I know that Deadpool is not the ideal candidate for a leadership position, especially a team like the Avengers. But given the amount of development that he's had over the past 2 movies, Deadpool is one of the most relatable and beloved characters that Marvel currently has in their lineup. And he's also played by a beloved character, Ryan Reynolds. So I know that we're all going to be scared, especially considering what happened under Deadpool's leadership with that X-Force team.
Bad news is the whole team is dead.
But given the other big 3 contenders, Deadpool, I think, is a very good fit. I mean, if you know Marvel Comics, right, you understand the very strange and hilarious relationship that Deadpool has with Spider-Man. I can see them working extremely well together. Just picture it, a trio between Deadpool, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange. Deadpool being the extreme wild card, Doctor Strange being the voice of reason and logic, while Spider-Man is the heart of it all. And besides, Deadpool already sees himself as the new savior of the MCU.
I'm the Messiah. I am Marvel Jesus.
So this theory isn't really that far-fetched. And this lineup could be introduced in the next Deadpool film, although I don't think it's gonna happen that way. With Spider-Man and Doctor Strange making a cameo, that way we can all be caught up on what's happening with the Incursion and how Spidey is living while being forgotten. It's definitely a route worth exploring. And I would also add here the potential for Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, also maybe replacing one of these characters and being a part of that big 3. Or maybe we have a big 4. Pedro Pascal is a beloved actor. The character Reed Richards is almost as equally flawed as Tony. He gets caught up in his own inventions, sometimes tries to do too much, which could end up having some major consequences for others. But I digress. Now, this isn't the lineup that is set in stone. It's my completely biased opinion based on heroes that I love and I want to see. So feel free to disagree as strongly as you want and let me know your picks in the comments below. In the end, Marvel needs a trio to give the MCU cohesion and center, just like Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor did. So let me know what you think. And speaking of Spider-Man, check out this next video here where we talk about what we would like to see in that next Spider-Man 4 movie. Check out our links that are down below in the description where you can follow us there on social media. And as always, thanks so much for kicking it with Keepin the Comic. Bye.